The winter sun glared sharp across the snow-packed depot yard as Isaiah Boone rode in, his horse crunching through white frost while a crowd gathered around a young woman standing alone beside a battered trunk, her dark braid dusted with ice crystals, her mail-order papers ripped in half and fluttering in the wind where the station master held them high like a warning to anyone foolish enough to claim her. He barked that she had lied on every line, that no proper bride hid her blood, her past, or the strange little medicine pouch she kept tied at her waist, and when he yanked that pouch free and dangled it at the crowd, they jeered, calling her cursed, calling her trickster, calling her Cherokee witch just loud enough for prejudice to crack the cold air. Isaiah halted instantly, his jaw tightening. Because he hadn't expected his Christmas bride to be here, nor rejected, nor trembling in the snow like a stray left for wolves, but the humiliation blazing across her cheeks made something hot and protective surge through him even as pride kept him silent. The station master slapped the medicine pouch against her frozen trunk and raised a rope, thick, coarse, claiming he would tie her to the rail until the next train carried her out, and the crowd leaned in, eager for cruelty disguised as order. Before Isaiah could think, the girl stepped backward, her boots slipping on the ice, her hands shaking too hard to defend herself, yet her chin lifted with a dignity no insult could take, and he realized she wasn't afraid of them. She was afraid of failing whoever had sent her here. When the station master grabbed her arm to drag her forward, Isaiah swung off his horse and closed the distance in 3 strides, catching the man's wrist before the rope could touch her, the force of his grip making the rope fall into the snow with a muted thud. The crowd hushed. The girl looked up, breath fogging in tiny white plumes, her eyes dark with both fear and something else. An old wound. A hidden story. Isaiah kept his voice low as he told the station master she was his bride still, contract or no, and that nobody would bind or shame her again. The man spat that Isaiah didn't know what he was taking in, that Cherokee blood brought curses, and her healing arts brought trouble. But Isaiah ignored him, reaching down to lift the medicine pouch from the snow. The moment his fingers brushed it, the girl flinched, not from fear of him, but from fear of it being taken, and he understood the pouch was her secret, her lifeline, maybe even her identity. He placed it gently in her hands and draped his coat over her shaking shoulders, shielding her from the cold and the stairs, and as sunlight cut across the depot yard, he realized Christmas had brought him not the bride he expected, but the one fate intended. Isaiah lifted the trembling bride, Lena, onto his horse before the station master could spit out another insult, her breath shuddering clouds into the cold air as he swung into the saddle behind her and guided the reins with one arm while the other steadied her against him, the vast white prairie stretching out before them like a frozen ocean waiting to swallow the wrong step. Snow gusted sideways in fierce, biting swirls as he pressed the bay into a steady trot, hooves punching into drifts that sprayed cold powder up their boots, while Lena clutched her medicine pouch tight to her chest, her silence brittle but determined as the depot's shouts faded behind them. A sudden cracking gust blew hard across the trail near the frozen creek, and Lena tensed violently, pulling at Isaiah's sleeve with a warning urgency just as the wind cleared enough for him to spot movement. 2 men on horseback riding fast from the west, the same trouble-seekers who had joined the mockery at the depot now trailing after them with a rope coiled between them, like they meant to drag her back for further humiliation. Isaiah kicked the horse into a sharp turn, speed tearing across the icy ground as Lena gripped the saddle horn, sheltering the medicine pouch with her body, and a gunshot cracked through the blizzard, splintering a fence post where they'd been a heartbeat earlier. Snow exploded around them as Isaiah steered the bay through the narrow creek pass, the frozen water groaning under the weight of hooves, and Lena suddenly tapped his chest hard. Twice, her silent signal for danger. He looked up just in time to see a fallen pine blocking the trail ahead, half buried in white. With no time to stop, he pulled Lena tightly against him, leaned the horse left, and vaulted over the lowest branch, snow bursting beneath them like shattered glass. They landed hard, but upright, Isaiah's arms locking around her to steady them both. Behind them, the pursuers struggled to navigate the drifted pass, buying precious seconds as Isaiah guided them toward a sheltering rise of sage-covered rock. The wind quieted just enough for him to hear Lena's breath. Fast, terrified, but still steady. And when he asked if she was hurt, she shook her head, clutching the pouch as if it held more than herbs, as if it held purpose. Isaiah pressed his gloved hand over hers, grounding her trembling fingers, and for the first time since leaving the depot, she looked back at him with a spark of trust warming in her cold, dark eyes. He told her he wouldn't let the men lay a hand on her again. Not today, not ever, and steered the horse toward the hidden trail that would take them out of sight before the next gunshot split the storm. Isaiah guided Lena through a narrow line of wind-carved rocks until the ranch finally appeared. A sweep of open land buried under winter light, the corral fences half frozen, the log barn standing solid against the biting Christmas wind as if holding its breath for their arrival. He lifted her down from the horse gently, her boots sinking into the snow while she held the medicine pouch close, the faint scent of crushed cedar drifting from its seams as though even the herbs inside braced against the cold. He led her into the barn, where daylight filtered through the slats in soft golden stripes, warming the dust and straw just enough to thaw the edge of her trembling. The moment they stepped inside, Lena hesitated, her eyes sweeping the stalls, the tools, the frostbit tack hanging from beams. As if measuring whether this place could hold someone like her or whether it would turn her away just as the depot had, Isaiah busied himself with the horse, brushing frost from its coat, giving her space without letting the silence become abandonment. But when he glanced back, she stood stiffly by the door, one hand pressed to her chest, fingers curled around the hidden pouch beneath his coat where she'd tucked it. He realized then she wasn't afraid of the ranch. She was afraid her presence would bring trouble to it. He approached slowly, stopping a few steps away, the winter air between them warmed only by the faint sun coming through the slats, and he told her she was safe here, that the men who'd followed wouldn't dare step onto his land without inviting hell. She didn't answer, but her shoulders loosened an inch, just enough to reveal she believed him. He offered her a place to sit on a hay bale near the sunlit stall, and she lowered herself carefully, running her fingers along the strands of straw as though reading a language woven into them. Isaiah noticed the slight tilt of her head, the way she closed her eyes for a heartbeat, and he wondered what she was listening for. Spirits, danger, memory, or something far older. Before he could ask, she opened her pouch and took out a small bundle wrapped in deer hide, laying it in her lap with reverence. And when she unraveled it, the barn filled with the rich scent of sage, pine resin, and crushed wildflower roots. Isaiah recognized none of it, but the way she handled the herbs, precise, almost ceremonial, told him this secret wasn't small. She looked up at him, meeting his gaze fully for the first time, then touched 2 fingers to her heart, then to the medicine, then to him. A quiet explanation he didn't yet understand. A shadow suddenly crossed the barn window, a rider in the distance, circling the ridge above the ranch, and Lena stiffened, her breath catching as her hand closed around the herbs. Isaiah stepped closer to her instinctively, blocking the window's glare, knowing the illusion of safety had just cracked. But in the warm glow of the barn, with her healing tools spread like pieces of truth, he also sensed that the secret she carried wasn't something to fear. It was something that might save everything he cared about. Isaiah shifted toward the barn door, his body instinctively stepping between Lena and the shape moving along the distant ridge. But before he could reach for his rifle, her hand shot out, light, trembling but firm, catching his sleeve with a silent plea that stopped him cold. She wasn't afraid of the rider. She was afraid of what Isaiah might do if he didn't know the truth first. She opened the small deer-hide bundle fully, letting the winter sunlight spill across the crushed herbs, the tiny carved tokens, the folded scrap of painted cloth, all arranged with a care that looked more like devotion than survival. Then she placed one item in Isaiah's palm. A tiny wooden charm carved in the shape of a river spiral, smooth from years of handling. He felt its warmth immediately, as though her touch lingered in the grain. Lena pressed 2 fingers to the charm, then to her own throat, then drew a soft circle in the cold air between them. A gesture so deliberate he felt the meaning long before he understood it. She was telling him she wasn't just Cherokee. She was a trained healer. And not by accident, by lineage, by calling. She reached deeper into the pouch and pulled out a folded piece of cloth painted with ochre lines, her clan's healer marking, worn only by those trusted to tend the sick, bless the crops, and stand between life and death when winter storms took the land. Isaiah's breath caught. A healer had not lived in these parts for years, not since the sickness that swept through the settlements 3 winters ago. His ranch had barely survived that season. His father hadn't. Now, as Lena placed the painted cloth gently in his hand, he felt a weight shift inside him, the kind that comes when a man realizes the stranger he misjudged might be the very answer to prayers he never dared voice. She motioned again, slow, steady, pointing first to the herbs, then to the land outside, then to his chest. He frowned, confused, until she stepped closer and touched his coat right above his ribs, pressing gently as if sensing something beneath. He stiffened. No one knew about the old injury beneath that spot, the one that left him breathless in cold weather, the one no doctor had ever fixed. But she felt it. Somehow. She opened her palm and revealed a small braid of dried golden root, rare, potent, its scent sharp enough to cut through hay and dust. She placed it on his chest, looking at him with a certainty that made his pulse stumble. She could heal him. Not promise. Heal. And maybe heal more than just him. But just as the truth settled between them, a sudden whistle split the air outside, sharp, mocking, too close. Lena flinched. Isaiah froze. The rider on the ridge was no stranger. It was Morgan Tate, the rancher who hated Isaiah since childhood, the man who wanted his land, the same man who had mocked Isaiah publicly for sending off for a bride like a desperate hermit. And now Tate had seen Lena. A Cherokee healer on Isaiah's ranch in the middle of winter? That was enough trouble to start a land war. Isaiah stepped toward the door, jaw tight, but Lena grabbed his arm again, firmer this time, shaking her head with a warning carved deep into her eyes. This wasn't just danger. It was the beginning of something much bigger. And the secret she had just revealed was not something Tate could ever learn. Not if they wanted to survive until Christmas morning. Isaiah barely made it 3 steps toward the open barn door before Morgan Tate's voice carried across the frosted yard. Sharp, smug, dripping with the kind of hatred only a jealous man could forge. "I see you finally got yourself a bride, Carter," he shouted, leaning forward in his saddle with a grin that belonged on a wolf. "Though I should have guessed you'd end up with one of them." The last word struck the air like a stone. Lena froze behind Isaiah, her fingers curling tight around her medicine pouch, terror flickering through her eyes, but also something else. Recognition. Isaiah stepped fully into view, planting his boots in the snow-packed dirt like a line drawn in the earth itself, his broad frame blocking Tate's view of the barn interior. "Turn your horse around and ride on," Isaiah said, voice level. Cold as the wind cutting across the plains. Tate laughed, a short, cruel bark, lifting a rolled document with a flourish, waving it like a trophy. "Can't do that. Got word from town yesterday. Carter Ranch owes 3 months in unpaid levies." He shook the paper again. "Which means the county can seize land or assets, and a wife counts as both." Lena sucked in a sharp breath, gripping Isaiah's coat through instinct alone. Tate saw the movement and smirked wider. "Didn't take long for her to cling, did it? Must be real used to begging for a place to stay." Isaiah took a single step closer to Tate's horse, and the animal shifted, sensing its rider's rising cowardice. "That paper means nothing," Isaiah growled. "I settled those levies last week." Tate's jaw ticked. The lie crumbled instantly, but he covered it with another smile. "Funny thing is, I heard your new bride was seen on the trail earlier. Alone, no wagon, no escort, no belongings." His eyes narrowed. "Makes a man wonder what she's running from." Lena's breath hitched. Isaiah felt it, felt her fear like a heartbeat pressed against his back, and something inside him snapped clean in two. "She's not your concern," Isaiah said. Slowly. Deadly. Tate leaned down in his saddle, eyes shining with malice. "If she's Cherokee, she's every settler's concern." And there it was. The real reason he'd come. Not levies, not land, hate. Pure and simple. Tate's hand drifted toward the rifle slung across his saddle horn, fingers grazing the stock in a silent threat. Lena reached for Isaiah again, fingers trembling, silently pleading. Isaiah moved first. He grabbed the rifle barrel mid-air just as Tate lifted it, twisting it down and away with the strength of a man who'd been fighting the land his whole life. The weapon clattered to the frozen ground. Tate's face drained of color. Isaiah didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He simply stepped even closer, his shadow swallowing the man who moments earlier had been so sure of himself. "You don't speak to her," he said quietly. "You don't look at her, and you sure as hell don't come onto my land again." Tate swallowed hard, but then his expression shifted into something darker. "Fine," he spat, "but the town won't like this, and I make sure the town sees everything." He yanked his reins harshly, spinning his horse around and kicking it into a gallop, snow spraying behind him like shattered glass. Isaiah waited until the sound of hooves faded into the distance before turning back toward Lena. Her shoulders trembled, not from cold, but from the truth she had feared. Tate knew she wasn't just Cherokee. He suspected she was important, a healer, a threat to the balance of the valley, and now he would not stop until he proved it. Isaiah reached out, placing a warm, steady hand on her shoulder. "You're safe here," he said softly. But Lena looked up at him, eyes shimmering with fear and certainty. She signed one message with slow, deliberate gestures. "Not while he's watching." Tate wasn't done. The real danger had only just begun. Isaiah led Lena into the warm glow of the ranch kitchen, the snow still sliding from his coat as he shut the door behind them, sealing out the sting of winter and the sting of Tate's hatred in one motion. The room smelled of simmering broth and wood smoke, golden sunlight pouring through the frosted windows and lighting the curls of steam that rose from the stove. Lena stood just inside the doorway, shoulders rigid, breath unsteady, her medicine pouch clutched tight as if it were the last piece of her life she trusted. Isaiah noticed how her hands trembled, not with weakness, but with held-back power, and how she kept glancing toward the door as if expecting Tate to crash through it with anger and rope. Quietly, Isaiah set a small tin cup in front of her, filled with warm broth, but she didn't drink. Instead, she pointed to his arm, lower, to the spot where Tate's rifle barrel had struck him during the struggle. Isaiah lifted his sleeve, surprised to see a swelling bruise darkening across his forearm, deeper and uglier than he'd realized. Lena stepped close, hesitation flickering in her eyes as if unsure she was allowed, but Isaiah nodded, giving permission without words. She reached into her pouch, pulling out a small bundle of dried leaves tied with red thread, a clay vial filled with resin, and a polished river stone etched with a Cherokee spiral. Her hands moved with instinctive grace, the movements precise, almost sacred. She crushed the leaves into powder on the stone, added a drop of resin, and mixed until the paste glowed faintly golden in the sunlight. Isaiah watched her, not the medicine, but her, the concentration, the care, the calm that settled over her whenever she worked with herbs, the person Tate wanted to destroy because he felt threatened by what he could never understand. When she touched the salve to Isaiah's skin, warmth bloomed instantly, not burning, not stinging, but soothing, deep, spreading through muscle like someone lifting a weight from inside the bone. Isaiah exhaled sharply, stunned. "That's incredible," he murmured. Lena didn't look up, but he caught the small smile she tried to hide. She pressed the spiral stone to the salve, whispering a single Cherokee word under her breath, a word he didn't understand but felt, before lifting her hand away. The pain was gone. Completely gone. Isaiah flexed his arm, jaw slack with disbelief. "Lena, that bruise should have kept me from working for a week." She stepped back, fingers tightening around her pouch, waiting for judgment, waiting for fear, waiting for the reaction the world had taught her to expect. Isaiah didn't hesitate. "Your gift saved my ranch more than once today," he said softly. "It may save it again." Her breath trembled, her lashes lowering as the fear in her eyes melted into something warmer. Relief, maybe even belonging. But the moment didn't last. A shadow crossed the window. A rider, moving slowly along the fence line, watching the house, watching her. Tate, or one of his men. Isaiah's jaw tightened. He stepped forward, placing himself between Lena and the window. "He's not getting near you," Isaiah said, voice firm as steel. "Not while I'm here?" Lena touched his chest gently, then tapped her own heart once, before lifting her medicine pouch in a silent vow. "I will protect this home too." For the first time since she arrived, Isaiah believed her healing wasn't just medicine. It was strength. And Tate had just declared war on both of them. Isaiah saddled the horses before first light, the sky still pale with winter dawn as snow crunched under his boots and breath ghosted into the quiet air. Tate's rider had circled the ranch twice during the night, slow, deliberate, taunting, and Isaiah knew exactly what that meant. Tate wasn't waiting for another chance. He was choosing the time and place, and he wanted Isaiah far from home when it happened. Lena stepped out of the barn, wrapped in Isaiah's old wool coat, the hem nearly brushing the ground. She carried her medicine pouch across her chest like armor, her eyes steady but shadowed with worry. Isaiah told her they were riding to the canyon ridge, where Tate had claimed the ranch's grazing land, falsely, as leverage. But before he could finish, she touched his arm and shook her head with sharp emphasis. She signed 2 words, "Trap waiting." Isaiah agreed, but they had no choice. Tate's lies now had legal threats tied to them, and if Isaiah didn't face him, Tate would bring the law, and the law would bring chains. They rode out together, snow swirling around the horse's legs as the sun slowly painted the plains gold. The trail narrowed near the canyon mouth, red stone walls rising on both sides like towering sentinels watching their approach. Lena kept glancing upward, her breaths short, reading shadows the way others read words. Isaiah's instincts bristled. A hawk screeched overhead, sharp, warning. As they entered the canyon bend, Tate stepped out from behind a boulder, flanked by two men with rifles slung across their backs. He wore a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Brought your witch with you," Tate sneered. "Good. Could use a little theater before we settle things." Lena froze behind Isaiah, her fingers tightening around her pouch. Isaiah dismounted slowly, placing himself between her and the three armed men. "You've had enough chances to walk away," Isaiah warned. Tate rolled his shoulders. "Not until she's off this land. Your land, our land, settlers' land." He tapped the butt of his rifle against the rock, the sound echoing through the canyon like a drumbeat. "Her kind brings trouble, superstition, fear. Folks listen to fear more than truth." One of Tate's men slid a coil of rope from his saddle, thick, rough, unmistakable. "We're here to make sure she leaves willingly," the man said. "Or not." Tate grinned. "I heard she works miracles. Let's see if she can heal herself after a fall." Lena swallowed hard, backing against a sunlit rock wall. Isaiah stepped forward, towering, fury simmering just beneath his calm exterior. But before he could speak, Lena moved. She reached into her pouch, not for medicine, but for the small river stone etched in the Cherokee spiral. Holding it high, she stepped into the light, letting the golden glow reflect off its smooth surface. Tate blinked, thrown off, hesitating. Isaiah seized the moment. He grabbed a handful of dry sand from the ground and flung it into the air in a sharp arc. The canyon wind caught it, blowing it directly into the riders' faces. Tate cursed, shielding his eyes. Isaiah lunged, knocking the rope from the man's grip and sending it skidding across the stone. A shot fired wild, ricocheting off the canyon wall. Lena ducked, and then, miraculously, raised the spiral stone toward the canyon floor. A gust of wind swept low, kicking dust upward, a natural shield that obscured her from view. Isaiah tackled Tate, the two men crashing into the dirt as the others scrambled to regain sight. The horses reared, spooked by the sudden storm of dust, and one rider was thrown clean off, hitting the ground with a thud. Tate swung wildly, but Isaiah caught his arm, twisting it behind his back until the man dropped his rifle. Tate screamed, furious and desperate. Isaiah leaned down, voice shaking with restrained rage. "You don't touch her," he growled. "Not today, not ever." Lena stepped toward him, her silhouette sharp against the swirling canyon dust, her eyes blazing with courage she didn't know she possessed. The wind stilled, falling back to calm as quickly as it had risen. Tate's men fled, their courage blown away with the sandstorm. Tate struggled, but Isaiah pushed him face down into the dirt until his fight went out like a snuffed flame. When Isaiah finally let him go, Lena offered her hand, not trembling this time, but steady, to help Isaiah rise. Their fingers touched, warm in the cold morning. She had found her courage, and Isaiah realized something equally powerful. He would follow that courage anywhere. The winter sun rose higher as Isaiah and Lena guided their horses toward the Cherokee encampment, nestled at the mouth of the Pine Valley, its smoke trails rising thin and straight against the pale morning sky. The tribe had gathered long before their arrival, elders seated in a half-moon arc, warriors standing behind them, mothers and children watching quietly from the edges. Word of Tate's ambush had traveled fast. Isaiah felt the weight of every gaze as he dismounted. But Lena stepped forward first, her hand brushing his gently, a silent reassurance. Her people met her halfway, old women reaching to touch her arms, children offering her small pine branches for protection, a young warrior placing a blanket around her shoulders. She bowed her head respectfully, but then lifted the spiral stone high, signaling she had something to reveal. The crowd hushed. Tate's rope, retrieved by Isaiah from the canyon, hung coiled at his side like a reminder of the danger she had faced. Now, in the bright daylight, Lena stepped into the center of the circle and placed the spiral stone on the ground, then laid the rope beside it. Opposites, life and harm, set together where all could witness. Chief Neshoba, her uncle, rose slowly, his voice carried with the authority of roots grown deep and storms endured. Our daughter was hunted. Murmurs rippled through the circle. Lena lifted her chin, eyes steady, and touched her throat, the signal of truth. Isaiah placed the third item before the chief, the broken piece of Tate's rifle that had shattered against the canyon stone. Chief Neshoba examined each item, nodding, then turned to Isaiah. "You shielded her," he said. "At your own risk." Isaiah bowed his head slightly, replying, "She saved us both. I only stood where I was meant to." The chief's mouth twitched, a hint of approval. But the moment shifted when Lena stepped in front of Isaiah, placing her palm over his heart for all to see. A bold gesture, a claim, a truth spoken in silence. Gasps stirred the crowd. The elders exchanged knowing looks. Chief Neshoba raised a hand, calling for quiet. "Our daughter chooses where her spirit rests," he said, "and we honor choice." But choice required clarity, so the chief motioned for the tribe's speaker, an elderly woman with silver braids and eyes as sharp as flint. She approached Lena and sprinkled cedar dust into the fire pit, releasing a curl of smoke that drifted upward. "Child," she said softly, "show them what speaks for you." Lena removed the embroidered cloth from her pouch, the same one she used to wrap her medicines, and unfolded it slowly. Inside lay the small feather token Isaiah had returned to her days ago, the token her mother had blessed before passing. The fire crackled. The tribe inhaled deeply. This was lineage. This was identity. This was her mother's voice carried forward. Lena knelt and placed the feather token beside the spiral stone. Chief Neshoba touched her shoulder, pride shining in his eyes, then addressed the circle. "A woman who carries healing must also carry safety. Today she shows who stands with her." All eyes shifted to Isaiah. He didn't step forward. He didn't speak. Instead, he bent down, picked up the rope Tate intended for Lena, and cut it clean in half with his hunting knife. The sound split the air, a final, irreversible gesture. The circle erupted, not in fear, but in approval. Warriors stomped their spears against the earth. Elders murmured blessings. Children ran to feed cedar to the fire. Chief Neshoba raised his voice. "Then let it be seen. Let it be known. Truth stands with truth." Lena turned toward Isaiah, eyes glowing in the sunlight. For the first time, she wasn't hiding. She wasn't apologizing. She was claiming a future. The circle closed around them, not trapping but embracing, recognizing them as something new, something chosen. Isaiah felt her hand slip into his again, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked at him without fear, only belonging. Isaiah's breath frosted the air as he stood at the edge of the Pine Valley with Chief Neshoba and 3 Cherokee warriors. Word had come from a scout at dawn. Tate had not fled the territory as expected. Instead, he was riding toward the border town, spreading lies that Lena had cursed his men, that she used witchcraft to summon storms, that Isaiah was helping her steal ranch land. Lies designed to spark a mob. Lies designed to make white lawmen turn their guns toward the Cherokee. The chief tightened the strap on his spear. "He wants fear," he said. "Fear listens faster than truth. We will not give him that ground." Isaiah nodded once, jaw clenched. Tate had crossed every line a man could cross. But this one was the most dangerous. He wasn't just threatening Lena now. He was threatening her people. Lena approached them quietly. Wrapped in her red and brown blanket, her braid over her shoulder glinting with beads that caught the morning light like embers. She carried no stones, no herbs, no medicine tools, only the small feather token resting against her heart. When Isaiah saw her, he felt something tighten in his chest. She was scared, but she was ready. Chief Neshoba studied her face. "You know why this must end today," he said. Lena nodded. Then she stepped beside Isaiah. Close, steady, unshaken. A statement in silence. The warriors mounted their horses, and Isaiah helped Lena onto his saddle before swinging up behind her. She leaned lightly against his chest, her fingers curling into his coat as they rode out of the trees and toward the open plains. Tate's trail wasn't hard to follow. Angry men often rode like tornadoes, fast, destructive, leaving churned-up earth behind them. They found him at the edge of the old cattle pens along the wagon road, shouting to a group of ranch hands, waving a broken rifle piece like a trophy. "She twisted the wind itself," Tate barked. "Nearly killed me. These people don't belong here, they—" His words died the moment he saw Isaiah approaching with Lena before him, and the Cherokee warriors forming a line on both sides. The ranch hands backed away instinctively, sensing the truth simply by the way Isaiah dismounted. With purpose, not rage, and the way Lena stepped forward to stand at his side, chin lifted, blanket falling in a perfect line around her shoulders. Chief Neshoba raised his spear as sunlight scattered across the dust. "You have lied," he said. Tate tried to laugh, but the sound cracked. "I told the truth. She's dangerous, look at her." He pointed to Lena, but his voice shook when she met his gaze without flinching. She touched her throat, the place her mother once blessed, and then pointed to the sky. A single hawk circled above. Tate paled. "That's not a sign," he snapped. "That's just—" Isaiah stepped forward, cutting him off. But Isaiah didn't draw a weapon. He opened his hand, revealing the two halves of the rope Tate had meant to hang Lena with. He dropped them into the dust. They landed like two pieces of a broken sentence. Every ranch hand's expression shifted in an instant. Tate's face drained. Chief Neshoba struck the earth with his spear. "Let truth be judged in daylight." A Cherokee warrior stepped forward, holding a carved wooden tablet, the tribe's traveling judgment board. Another warrior placed Tate's broken rifle piece at its center. Isaiah added the rope halves. Then Lena stepped forward, last. She placed her mother's feather token beside them, not accusing, but showing what Tate tried to destroy. Gasps rose from both Cherokees and ranch hands. Tate panicked. "She's twisting your minds. She's cursed. But no one listened anymore. Isaiah looked at the ranch hands. "You saw the wind rise in the canyon," he said. "You saw Tate try to drag her. You know what happened." Several men nodded. One stepped forward. "He wanted us to scare her off the land," he admitted, shame burning his cheeks. "We didn't know he'd try to kill her." Chief Neshoba turned to Tate. "You are given one choice: exile from these lands, never to return. If you cross these borders again, you will answer to both the Cherokee and the ranchers you tried to deceive." Tate's mouth twisted, fury shaking him, until Lena stepped forward. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She lifted the spiral stone Isaiah had placed into her palm that morning and held it toward the sun, a blessing for truth, a farewell to fear. Tate stumbled backward, unable to meet her gaze, then fled down the wagon road, alone, exposed, powerless at last. The ranch hands silently cleared a path for him. Isaiah felt Lena's shoulders relax beneath her blanket as she exhaled, not in fear, but in release. Her people had stood for her. Isaiah had stood with her, and truth had chosen its side. The wind softened as Tate's lonely figure shrank on the horizon, his tracks trailing off into empty land where he could harm no one again. In the clearing beside the old cattle pens, silence settled. Not heavy, not tense, but peaceful, like the land itself exhaled after holding its breath too long. Lena stood with her blanket wrapped around her shoulders, the sunlight warming her braid, the feather token resting against her heart as steady as a heartbeat, finally free to beat its own rhythm. Isaiah remained beside her, not touching, not assuming, just present in the way only a man who truly understood her could be. Chief Neshoba approached and placed a hand over Lena's shoulder, speaking softly in Cherokee, words Isaiah couldn't understand but could feel through the emotion on her face. The chief then turned to Isaiah. "She has a home with her people," he said, "and now she must choose her place." Lena lifted her eyes to Isaiah, and for a moment the world shrank to just them, the rancher who had carried her through storms and danger, and the healer who had shown him what courage looked like in silence. She stepped closer, letting her blanket fall open so she could reach into her medicine pouch. From it, she removed the small embroidered cloth, the one that held her mother's feather, the one that held every memory of home she ever had. She unfolded it slowly. Inside it lay the spiral stone and a fresh sprig of winter pine. Isaiah swallowed hard. Gifts of meaning, of healing, of direction. Lena held out the cloth to him, not to take from her, but to share with her. An offering, a belonging. Isaiah hesitated, breath tight in his chest. "Are you sure?" he whispered. She didn't answer with words. Instead, she lifted the feather token and placed it, firmly, deliberately, into the breast pocket of his coat. A claim, a blessing, a choice. Gasps rippled softly among the tribe. Even the horses in the clearing seemed to quiet. Chief Neshoba nodded once, solemn and proud. "Then it is decided," he said. "Her heart chooses where it is safe." Isaiah's legs felt unsteady for the first time in years. He had protected her, fought for her, nearly died for her, but this was the moment that truly undid him. Lena reached up, fingers trembling only slightly, and touched his jaw. A silent promise. "I choose you, if you choose me back." Isaiah rested his hand over hers, warm and steady. "Then stay," he whispered. "Stay on the ranch. Stay with me." Her eyes softened, relief and joy blooming together. She nodded, and in that small, simple motion, the winter sun seemed to brighten across the whole clearing. The Cherokee warriors let out low, approving murmurs. The elders smiled. Even Chief Neshoba's stern mask cracked into something warm. Lena stepped back just enough for Isaiah to lift her into the saddle. This time she didn't cling in fear. She leaned against him with a peace she had never known. They began the slow ride toward the ranch, the tribe escorting them until the valley widened into open plains. At the ridge, Chief Neshoba raised his spear in farewell, offering one final blessing into the wind. Lena placed her hand over Isaiah's heart as they rode on, the feather token still inside his coat, right where she had placed it. She wasn't returning to the life she lost. She was choosing the life she had found. And as sunlight washed over the ranch below, quiet and waiting, her choice felt like the beginning of something bigger than both of them. If you were in her place, would you return to the family you came from, or choose the heart that stood for you? Like, share, and subscribe for more Native American tales told in the open sun.